Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Rebel Clash, go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using the code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are going over the new updated DragonShield tournament, the second one of these that they're running. It's really awesome to be invited back to take part in this. I got second in the last one with the fighting type, and this time I've been given the metal type for this tournament. So we're going to be looking at the new additions of Rebel Clash, and it's actually way more impactful than I thought. A lot of these decks are getting a real new breath of life in terms of potential new attacking cards that we have from Rebel Clash, but also just the way decks will be built in general, because we have some very important trainer cards from Rebel Clash that will be changing things up quite dramatically. So that's where I'm going to start actually. We're going to go to the trainers, and I'm just going to filter to Rebel Clash, and we'll take a quick look. So straight away, Boss's Orders jumps out at you immediately. I think previously Gust was pants in this format. We had 2 custom catchers. Remember, the rules are you can play 2 copies maximum of cards. In this format, also, for those unaware, you get selected 1 type. You can only play Pokemon of that 1 color, and then you also can play colorless Pokemon, but you have to play more of your specific color than the colorless Pokemon in your list. And also Prism Stars are not available for this tournament, so all stuff to bear in mind. But basically, we only had 2 custom catchers, or 2 Pokemon catchers were our gusting options, apart from Fire, which had Ninetales. Now, Boss's Orders enters the format, which is going to be a really big deal, because obviously we have potential to Palpad, to Malolana. There's even a Chatot that you can use that's a colorless card that can coin flip for getting supporters back into your hand. It's, you know, 50% Eldegoss, which could be interesting. But yeah, Boss's Orders seems like a huge deal. I played Hitmons in the previous tournament, and part of the reason why I was able to get away with a deck that did such sort of small chip damage throughout the entire game was you normally bought yourself extra turns with Pokedolls, and a few other decks were trying to rely on Pokedoll as well. Now, do I think Pokeball Doll is still good in this format? Yes, almost certainly. But Boss's Orders definitely will be punishing that, and it punishes setup decks a lot. Some Stage 2 Pokemon that maybe were a little bit more viable in the previous tournament may seem a little riskier now that people can simply boss you up and take knockouts on those sorts of things. So bench sitters are a lot less safe, which is something to bear in mind. Burning Scarf, not the strongest tool, but obviously Arcanine's a fire card, and ramping up a Stage 1 to that amount of hit points is going to be cool. Capacious Bucket, helping out water. Frostmoth is definitely the strongest water archetype I can think of. So that will certainly be a nice addition there, making it a little bit more consistent in the early turns. Cursed Shovel is one of quite a few new control cards that we can play. As good as Boss can be for proactive plays, you can also think about using Boss plus Galamine as a combo to slow things down, and having Cursed Shovel in your deck can be an extra way to proactively mill stuff. We actually saw in the first qualifier, Mill was played. It didn't do great, but Alessandro did take a Mill archetype. It was actually the water deck that he had with Slow Kings and Sea Kings. And I think more general players can go towards a milling approach with Cursed Shovel around. So something to bear in mind. I think Mill's in an even better, like, it has maybe not a better spot, but it has more tools than it did in the previous tournament when you have potential to spam Boss, Galamine, Cursed Shovel. So definitely something that I'm cautious of, and we'll get into the metal typing soon, and it actually has a decent amount of controlling core cards that I could go for if I really wanted to. Outside of that, Scoop Up Net, giant card. It gives decks freedom of movement, and it also gives decks healing, because obviously everyone is playing non-V, non-GX Pokemon in this tournament. We're not allowed to use multiple prize cards Pokemon, so Scoop Up Net for everyone. I would imagine everyone is playing 2 copies of Scoop Up Net, and again, that pushes us towards a more one-hit KO style approach for the most part, and yeah, something to bear in mind. Everyone's going to have easy removal and healing, so you really got to be smacking in this format for sure, otherwise people will get free turns out of you, which is just gross. And also it benefits you if you can play tanking cards, so stuff to bear in mind. Sonya's a nice option, just for, again, consistency. One of the headaches of this current tournament, we can't use Professor Oak's setup very easily, because you only play 2 types. You could play Lecture, but that's specific to a few things. Sonya being a nice addition. across the board is going to be decent. Tool Scrapper also a really welcome addition to this format because if you remember, I played 2 copies of Farfetch'd in the previous tournament, and Scrapper is actually a really big deal because there are spell tags, there are big charms, there are air balloons, there's all sorts of annoying tools out there, so even Vitality Band to an extent. Beastite is a very strong tool, so scrappering all of those things away is going to be a really big deal. I would expect most people to be playing at least 1 copy. There's also a couple of nice stadiums, training court for making sure you don't whiff attachments, which is pretty decent, and turf field is great for grass decks. I think one of the issues of Rillaboom previously was that consistency. When you don't have Eggrow to get you there, you need to have multiple outs to get yourself into the Rillaboom as quickly as possible. So having access to more grass type evolutions is going to really help you out there. Also, it might make things like Alolan Eggs potentially more viable because you can just try and get those rolling throughout the entire game. Alolan Eggs with 160 hit points opens itself up to scoop up net really nicely. And also you can have Flapple as well for extra damage modifiers in grass now. So yeah, Turffield seems really, really good. Special Energy is also an absolute gift from Rebel Clash. We had some great special energies. Capture Energy hasn't really had its chance to shine in Standard just yet, but there are a lot more colorless, viable attacking options in this format. So Capture is broken. I'm expecting most decks to play 2 copies unless their attackers specifically don't take this sort of energy, but I think it's actually worth it to tailor your deck to attackers that at least have 1 colorless in their attack cost because of how good Capture Energy is. I think Ball Search is super duper premium in a format like this when you only play 2 copies of things. When you have tutoring for basics, it is like the absolute dream. So Capture Energy, completely broken. Horror Energy, also very good. I would imagine Malamar is still the best way to play Psychic. There is also the non-GX Dragapult though that could potentially take advantage of this. So yeah, Horror Energy has some good homes. Even if you are playing Malamar, I would still probably play Horrors. Just 2 copies seems really good. Speed Energy, obviously nuts. Extra consistency for anything lightning that you're playing, which is great. And Twin Energy is literally just DCE in this format. So we get to play 2 copies of DCE now. And that opens up a lot of colorless attacking options. Things like 150 hit point Snorlaxes, 130 hit point Kangaskhan's that can just do like vanilla 100 or like vanilla 80. Those cards are scary. There's also a Dramper that I think does like 120 for 2 colorless. So if someone can just like cheese that on people straight away, it's going to be super scary. Let's jump to the... Oops, I didn't filter for Rebel Clash. Actually, no, we'll keep it like this. We'll note the new Rebel Clash stuff, but we'll also talk about old cards that get improved by the likes of, like I said, Twin Energy, especially for the colorless stuff. So the last time I looked at this, the best colorless stuff, draw engine-wise, was Cincino Pidgeotto. Delcatty might be even stronger in this format because it can help you get boss's orders back for the right times. So that seems interesting. Previously, I had Farfetch'd as an option, but I imagine most people will go towards Tool Scrapper now, so that I can delete probably. We had Licky Licky and Aerodactyl as potential attackers. So yeah, those are the only notes I had on colorless, but like I said, with Twin Energy now, you can think about cards like this, like an opening card that has 150 vanilla hit points, can draw you cards in the early game, and if you hit Twin Energy, you're hitting 120 on 2? Like, oh no, Snorlax is unreal. He really is unreal in this format. I think he is like super pog. 150 vanilla when you have Scoop Up Net. Like, this is just wild. So I think make space for your twins, make space, Twin Energies, make space for your Snorlaxes. They seem just, in terms of raw stats alone, like, he's a build-around. He's just a build-around card, and if any archetype's playing Acceleration, he gets even stronger. So yeah, Snorlax, mind-blowingly strong from Rebel Clash, for sure. The Chatot I mentioned, flip a coin of heads, put support from your discard pile into your hand. I imagine it's more likely worth the space to play the Delcatties over this, but if you're trying to high roll, you could try having Chatot in here. Basically turns your boss's orders into worst Pokemon catchers though, so you probably just want to play that instead. Obviously this has the upside of getting you like consistency cards, but typically it's going to be looking for bosses more often than not. Like I mentioned with the Cursed Shovel, we get a Bunnelby that can mill 1 card, just the 1, but one thing that's really important to note is you have to play like more of your own type, so you normally want to skimp out on as many colorless as you can, because you'll want those to be Pidgeotos and Cinccino's if you're playing control. So Bunnelby, probably not all that impactful, but something to bear in mind. We have, like I said, more Snorlax. Like, all of these are reasonable. They all have 150 hit points, and when they're just a much cheaper attachment with those twins, like, yes, they're not high odds of you finding Twin Energy early, but man, like, you probably even just play Guzhala in this format, because Twin Energy and Capture Energy are so insane. So yeah, Snorlax Guzhala package, maybe even Tag Call package is worth it in this format, because Malolana's good, Sinlin is good, Guzhala's good, and getting Twin is nuts. So yeah, I'm thinking some Snorlax Guzhala action is going to be broken in this sort of format. Cinccino is still good. Oranguru gets better, again, because you can Twin Energy him now, so he gets stronger. Here's the Drampa. Oh, it's just 80 for one. Okay, 80 for one, like, all in one turn, just a little smack. Yeah, scary. You do discard cards from your own deck, so it's not like your main attacker, but the tempo he can come out with is just disgusting. So yeah, definitely something to bear in mind. I do think these colorless cards will have a big impact on this format for sure, now that Twin Energy and Capture are like viable options. So yeah, they all seem like really good deals. All of these Snorlaxes, just the amount of hit points they have is so insane. So I think those are going to be strong. Obviously, Munchlax is a decent card. Not much else to say here on the colorless stuff, but also bear in mind, obviously, Porygon-Z is an option for all decks. So yeah, if you need to have acceleration, you can go down that route. As I mentioned earlier, Kangaskhan can be nice. Like, this is going to be a great card in like Rillaboom for sure. It's just an attacking threat to get yourself. So you can play the new Snorlax that can draw 2 cards as your early game, and you can play Fast Evolution Kanga. And then all you need is like 2 Heracross, and then like your attackers are done for Rillaboom. So yeah, that's cool. Every deck loses Ditto Prism Star, which is a shame. That was a nice consistency option for a lot of people. Let you play multiple stage 1s, so that's a bit of a loss. I think it pushes the format even more towards big basics. So something to bear in mind. But other than that, I think we're pretty much all good with the colorless stuff. Oranguru, probably again just more broken in this format because there's better control cards, and if you can loop resource management with like Scoop Up Net and stuff, that's just crazy. So Oranguru as a controlling card and as an anti-control card seems nuts. So yeah, something to bear in mind. We are in standard, right? I'm not even in standard. Have I been talking about cards that aren't even here? Most of the time I haven't been, but I just saw the Miltank and I was about to say how broken it was. But it's not possible. But yeah, I think I covered most of the cards that were in standard, fortunately. I have looked over this once. But yeah, let's look at some of the other types now. So Dragon and Fairy are not in the format. Let's jump to Metal, which is my type. And we'll filter for the new Rebel Clash stuff. So pre-Rebel Clash, the Metal decks that I thought were going to be most powerful were Copperaja, and Magnezone variants. I thought those were going to be, so Magnezone Big Basics and Copperaja with some like cheap early game attackers were probably the strongest things. So I think one real bonus that Metal gets is this Galarian Meowth, which makes the damage buff Galarian Berserker way, way stronger. Obviously it's a secret rare in this set, but it's from Sword and Shield base that does damage buff. So enabling this to be a searchable stage 1 buffs a lot of damage from Metal stuff, and I think the damage output we need to reach to deal with a lot of these stage 1 Pokemon, oh sorry, stage 2 Pokemon is around that 160 range. So yeah, the damage output needs to be pretty high in this format if you want to get around Scoop Up Net, which I think is going to be pretty vital. So yeah, Berserker's going to be nice for modding damage. Probopass could be reasonable with good old Gravitational Drop with Galamine, but it's kind of situational, although it is a cheap attacker. I think, obviously, I was excited by the Sizzle, but you can't use it because of Scyther. Bronzong has hit and run, but it's way less strong with Boss's Orders in the format. You can have some additional tanking with Big Shield if you want to, but it will take up a lot of your spaces, and I think lists are quite tight in this format because you want to have space for a bunch of supporters, a bunch of Ball Search, and Metal specifically likes having a high tool count because of Magearna combo, so that's something to bear in mind. But I think some really cool stuff is just you can go down a Big Basics route of Metal now, which I think is appealing to me. I think I'll probably be playing Metal Big Basics or with a 2/2 Berserker, or I'll be playing Control Metal. Those are the two things that I think are strongest for me, at least. because Duraludon is crazy. Metal Sharpener doing early damage prods that get more relevant with Berserker damage early on is cool. Power Beam is like worth working towards. You have Metal Sources to help accelerate at the same time. This Metal Sharpener can go towards the active or to the bench, so if your opponent's having a slow start or if they look to be setup based, you can just sharpen it to yourself and set up Power Beam for turn 2 for, again, just really good pressure, like 130 or more with Vitality Band or a second Berserker down, so that seems really cool. And I think the Zacian's bad, but the Zamazenta seems reasonable. Power Rush for 120, and if Tails, this Pokemon can't attack, you can get around this quite easily with switches, air balloons that you can play with Magearna. You're probably playing Jirachis anyway if you're Metal, so you'll probably have switch into pivots with Stellar Wish. And like I said, Scoop Up Net's going to be very strong. You've got Malolana, which is probably strong with Metal specifically, because you get to play Goggles. Frying Pan is banned in their format, but I can still play Goggles and I can still play Metal Core Barrier. So you can have some tanky Metal type basics, and you can try and get around this Power Rush if you really have to. But yeah, 120 being buffed by Berserkers on the bench seems like a build around. So I think I'm going to be trying some sort of like Duraludon, Zamazenta, Berserker kind of deal. I think there's also a couple other basic attackers that I can go for. Unfortunately, I can't use Solgaleo Prism Star because he would have been very, very cool. This guy, because Prisms are out of this format. But something to bear in mind, if I want to go down the Beast-type route, which seemed to serve me quite well in the previous tournament, it really helped push things like Stack Attacker and Buzzwole as late game threats. I could try something with Dustmane. Obviously, Dusk Shot not being a great attack early on doesn't sound that appealing. I think I'll basically always be playing a one copy of Magearna because Change Clothes is pretty busted. I don't think I'll be playing much else. I think... So in the last tournament, Metagross was the metal deck that was played, but I don't think that's as correct as playing aggro big basics. You normally just get on the field much easier. That's the Cobalion that I'd think about playing, 3 for 120 again, similar to the Zamazenta, but you have to have a tool attached rather than having to coin flip to whiff an attack. So probably a split between Cobalion and Zamazentas, I think. And yeah, if I was playing Control, I'd be looking towards having Mountain Munch as a twin energy attacking option, and having Boss's Orders and other control pieces. There's a few other annoying metal types that can slow people down as well, like Galarian Stunfisk and stuff like that. So yeah, and even this has like Crunch and a few other things. So I've definitely debated having a control metal deck as well as an aggro sort of big basics Berserker list. Those are my real thoughts on this sort of 60. I think I'm moving away from Magnezone. It's slow to set up even with Jirachi to help you out. And I think with Boss's Orders, I am a little bit concerned about my strategy sort of crumbling as soon as a Magnezone gets gusted when you just play 2 copies of Rare Candy. So I'm more likely to just be playing aggro basics with Berserker. But yeah. Dark won the previous tournament pre-Rebel Clash, and that was with a combination of Spiritomb, Obstagoon, and Umbreon as the main attackers, as well as a Buzzwole Beastring sort of mini package. I can't see that changing too much because the Dark attackers aren't that great. I think Grimmsnarl is way too slow. I think Galarian Weezing has like very weak damage output. Mandibuzz can be a nice sniping card if you want to add this into your deck, just to sort of pressurize some things. Obviously you play Zigzagoon, so you naturally can set up Blindside to just like detonate things from behind without needing the boss, which can help you just draw cards throughout the entire game, which is pretty exciting. But I don't think there's too much new exciting stuff for Dark. They are already like super strong, so it's something to bear in mind. For fighting, I don't think they gain a huge amount either. The Colossal is a potential new accelerator that you can use for fighting. I'm not sure if they're stronger than Hitmons plus Ultra Beasts. I would lean towards not, because lack of consistency, you're ending up having to play dual typing and stuff like that. But it does open up some tankier cards. You can play some Stonejourners as big basics. You can play some like Groudons and still have that late game Ultra Beast package if you really want to. But I don't think it's going to be as consistent as Hitmons. Do bear in mind, Hitmon's damage gets a lot weaker because just everything else is like outscaling it. When we look towards these other types, they're just outscaling Hitmon damage a lot of the time. So something to bear in mind. Again, for Rebel Clash, Psychic gained a couple really nice things. Dragapult, this baby non-GX Pult, seems like an absolute monster. I thought Mali was one of the strongest decks going into this tournament previously, but man, this Dragapult seems nuts. 150 hit points that can sometimes on coin flips just prevent that damage. Such an insane build around. So take your pick. If you want to just play Mali Tina tags, it's pretty nuts. But if you want to play Dragapult, it's also pretty nuts. So you have your pick, really, of what you want to go for. If you want to flip some coins and be a tankier guy with bench control, man, I'd be super tempted to play Pult over Mali. It's a little bit more setup, but it can be pretty rewarding. If you are playing Mali, you gain a new Sigilyph, which could be reasonable, especially because the damage cap that you need to hit is much lower a lot of the time than it would be in Standard. Cursula I still think is pretty bad, especially with Boss's Orders around. But if you want to go for this, you can, but your damage output is so weak that I would go for Dragapult or just play Squids. Also, you can go, again, control is a thing. You can try and just play Palace Hand Mill if you want to. I don't think it's all that strong, but if you do want to build around that, it's an aggressive mill if you want. So I think still probably play Mali, but you can play the new Pulse. That would be pretty oppressive with just 1 or 2 head flips throughout the entire series, basically. So yeah. For lightning stuff, Nuzzlechew seemed to be the strongest thing, or you could go down with Magnezone Big Basics. I don't think too much has changed. Electivire is an interesting stage 1 with the new Capture Energy and Speed Lightning Energy being introduced. Electrified Bolt doing 180 for 3 is expensive. Lightning obviously doesn't have that same acceleration that it would with the Prism Star stuff, so it's kind of like a slow build towards, but man, that damage output is like super good, and you want to play Special Energies anyway. I was thinking of having maybe like this sort of Luxray package alongside Electivire as like a multiple stage 1 thing. So like you can spend your turn attachments on Electivire for the majority of the game whilst you're doing like raid into Headbolt and that sort of stuff. I don't know how consistent that would be, but it seemed reasonable. I think for the most part you probably just play Nuzchew anyway. But yeah, something to bear in mind. Like lightning decks just gain Speed Lightning for free, so they just sort of like have that and stay as they are. So water is still definitely best as Frostmoth, no doubt about that in my mind. But it does gain a couple potential new attackers. This Cramorant seems pretty good, doing 50 plus 20 for each water. This can get pretty dangerous, especially with Capacious Bucket. You get strong. One of the reasons why Frostmoth was so insanely strong was Volt Prism Star, which does get removed in this tournament. Which makes me think that this Ice Cube isn't going to be great, but the tankiness of this Ice Cube is still pretty appealing. Taking 60 less out the gate, being a pretty tanky guy and just sort of smacking with Blizzard. Looking for like 2 to 3 shots, but the bench damage that you could do is reasonable. And if you just use this Ice Cube enough times, if you just like jam it again, jam it again, jam it again, if you use things like Scoop Up Nets, if you use Big Charms, if you use Energy Retrievals and Fishermans and stuff, maybe you can get there just with like an army of Ice Cube Blizzarding the whole time. So yeah, Frostmoth still seems nutty to me. Maybe a little bit weaker with Volt Prism going, but the Ice Cube comes in as like a nice alternative option anyway. And again, just the fact that we have basically a 180 hit point basic in this format, and it's just like a thing, is pretty hard to deal with, I would say. Speaking of high hit point stuff, Arcanine can push itself to 230, which is just a thing. So yeah, Tool Scrapper, 1 or 2 of I'm advising for this tournament. I actually think it's super important if you want to have a chance against fire, unless you're playing Frostmoth. Even if you don't worry about the fire archetype, maybe because you stay out of fire main damage range or whatever, you probably want to have Tool Scrappers for Mali anyway, and a ton of other decks are playing, you know, balloons and big charms and stuff. So yeah, Scrapper seems nuts. Even on like Snorlaxes and stuff like that. So yeah, something to bear in mind. So I think this Arcanine is potentially risky, but it depends if other people actually play Scrapper. And if they only play a one-of, you can probably get away with still playing Arcanine because he's just so big and bulky. But yeah, he seems interesting. The previous list of fire was simply Cinderace that self-accelerates to himself. But the stage 2 is like quite slow. A new alternative option is playing Magmortar. Ground Burn does 80, and if you discard, or you force a discard from both players' top decks, and you do 100 more of each energy you discarded, you basically, as long as you play a Rangaroo or 2 copies of Guru in your own deck, and if you play like your Fire Crystals and stuff like that and a decent amount of Fire Energy, which you want to anyway because you're a Welder deck, you can get that Ground Burn hitting 180 on a Welder on a stage 1. So I think Magmortar is probably the new best Fire deck because you do have a little bit less bulk than Cinderace, but you're just on the board quicker, and that's probably like the most important thing. So Magmortar as like a 2-2 line, potentially some of just the Ninetales and the Magcargo, those sorts of cards chilling in the background. I think that's all you need. Potentially even having like a Baby Blown if you want to for like B-string plays, if you're running low on Welders or whatever. Maybe just Magmortar with like a Rangaroo and Delcatty is just good enough. That sounds pretty reasonable because 180 is like filthy damage, really, really good damage. One-shotting every stage 2 in this format, basically. Even one-shotting an Ice Cube, which is Pog. So yeah, Magmortar seems very good for Fire. Probably, I would say certainly better than Blaziken actually. What am I talking about? Cinderace, now that I think about it. Yeah, that Magmortar seems nutty in this format. For the grass stuff, you also get some absolute treats. This Ludicolo seems, again, just super crazy. It's a twin energy attachment, or you could play 3 CE, and you can just use Spirited Rushdown, 60 for each prize card you've taken. Obviously, you're not going to play this on its own. I'm thinking probably you want to play Alolan Eggs with Ludicolo. A lot more Stage 1 Rush decks than there were in the previous meta, I think. So Grass, the last time, played Rillaboom with some big basics. I think Rillaboom Big Basics is still like good to go. Like I said, if you play Twin Energies and Snorlax, I'm not going to judge you for it. But if you do want to play Alolan Eggs Ludicolo, I think that has some better longevity in the late game. Because if you use your Alolan Eggs kind of like proactively in those early turns, it's a cheap energy attacker. You can just sort of get on the field early. All you need is like a Shuckle to do some reasonable damage output early on. You are already forced to play things like Acrobikes and discard supporters that are already good in this format, like Hapus and stuff. If you do that and just get your low maintenance Alolan Eggs rolling, and then lean into this Ludicolo, like after you've taken, 2 prize cards, this card's already like value. Once you take 3 or 4, this card is like the most threatening card possible. And obviously this is a cheater because you can use Lombre's top entry as well. So I would play Alolan Eggs plus a Rangaroo with like 2-2 Lombre Ludicolo, and that sounds nuts as like a sweeper. So yeah, Ludicolo seems really, really good. So this format's actually changed quite drastically. Also, there's that Flapple that we talked about that you can play with good old Turffield Stadium. So yeah, that's also a really good thing about top entry Lombre. With Turffield, you can, as soon as you hit that Orangaroo, you can Turffield Orangaroo, and then you've always got that Lombre that you can stack to the top every single turn. So yeah, new updates for this format. Control gets stronger because Boss and Galamine becomes an option, as well as Cursed Shovel. Do bear in mind though, I'm expecting a lot of Tool Scrapper. I'm expecting, in addition to switches, potentially in the place of switches at the very least, Scoop Up Nets will be in the format. But it could be in addition to, so definitely something to bear in mind. Everyone's going to be using Twin Energies and Capture Energies for sure. If you're Grass, I prefer Alolan Egg Ludicolo as a deck to Rillaboom Big Basics, but either's kind of fine. If you're Fire, Arcanine could be decent, and I think Magmortar seems way stronger than Cinderace and previous Stage 2 options, which were also like Charizard, Chandelure, those sorts of things. So I think those are going to be the best. If you're Water, you're still playing Frostmoth basically always. So yeah, if you're Lightning, you're probably still playing Nuzlocke. I don't think there's much else better. Maybe if you are playing Nuzlocke, you can try and add in the Electivire for some more like stable damage output in that mid game. So, I mean, maybe this just goes into Nuzlocke. I'm not too sure about that. Still kind of question mark around Lightning. Last time I played Magnezone Big Basics and didn't do great. So maybe this is one of the weaker types, I would assume. Psychic can play Squids happily, but could also just play the new Dragapult, which seems nuts. Fighting can play Hitmon still with the Beast package as the late game. or it can just play Colossal Big Basics if it wants to. If you're playing Dark, Obstagoon still seems like the strongest thing with Spiritomb and Guzzlord, but you can add in Mandibuzz if you really want to for snipe pressure, which actually seems really exciting when you already have goons to try and set up damage. Maybe you actually lean into the Mandibuzz as more of the attacking option and just have like Obstagoon scoop up nets as like your sort of damage mod, I guess. That could be an interesting thing to explore for sure. For Metal, for me, I'm either going to be playing like controlling Durant stuff with the new Twin Energies and all those sort of shenanigans, Boss Galamine shenanigans, or I'll be sort of like Duraludon Big Basics with Berserker damage buffing, thanks to the new Meowth. And for colorless stuff, I mean, Snorlax being 150 hit points is just stupid. Like, how good is this card just in a vacuum? You start him, you're happy. In the mid game, as long as you find Twin Energy, like, he's good value. So yeah, like, I can see Snorlax being just like in decks because he's super strong. And I also think that Delcatty is much stronger in this format than it was previously. I think most people sat with Cinccino's in their list last time, and I think there's definitely some reason to go towards Delcatty in this one with the access to boss. That sounds super important to me, because bench control in these sorts of decks that can have slow setups at times and have suboptimal turns, you can punish massively with Delcatty and boss's orders. So yeah, that seems really good. Let me know your thoughts on the DragonShield Gym challenge now that we have the additions of Rebel Clash. Was there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you're trying out with one of these types? And yeah, hopefully I'm going to get some games underway. They're going to be on PTCG Radio YouTube channel, of course. Ross always does a good job commentating over those. I don't quite know all the people in the tournament yet, so I don't know what my bracket is. I haven't started any games, and I haven't actually settled on my deck. I have made 2 lists so far. I've made a control and an aggro list, which I've already mentioned like throughout the video. But I'm still finalizing those 60s, but it certainly has been on my mind. So let me know what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching this kind of different video for today. I'm starting to sort of pack up with Standard and start looking towards the future, so prepare for some of those videos coming up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.